Hello and welcome to Dreaming Perspectives. Tonight, we will drift into the gentle world of a personal journal accidentally left behind in a quiet cafe. As you settle in and relax, allow yourself to experience life from this unique perspective. A handwritten journal filled with intimate thoughts, now passing between curious strangers, each adding their own reflections as it journeys through unexpected hands. If you find these sleep stories helpful for your rest, perhaps consider subscribing or leaving a like. It helps our channel continue creating these peaceful moments for you. Now take a deep breath. Find a comfortable position and let this soothing story guide you toward peaceful sleep. The morning light filters through the large windows of the cafe, casting warm golden rays across my leather-bound cover as I rest quietly on the window seat. I am a journal, handwritten and well-loved, accidentally left behind by my owner just moments ago. The leather of my cover feels warm where the sunlight touches it, and my pages flutter slightly in the gentle breeze from a nearby air vent. I have been the keeper of someone's most intimate thoughts for many months now, collecting dreams, hopes, fears, and observations about the world. My pages contain the gentle handwriting of someone who has trusted me with their deepest reflections. The cafe around me hums with the soft murmur of morning conversations, the gentle clink of ceramic cups against saucers, and the rhythmic whirring of the espresso machine. I have been forgotten, at least for now, left to observe this peaceful place from my vantage point by the window. The sunlight continues its slow journey across my cover, warming the rich brown leather that has been softened by months of handling. My owner has carried me everywhere, their fingers tracing patterns on my cover during moments of thought. I have been held close during times of sadness, opened wide during moments of inspiration, and carefully stored away during times of rest. Now I rest here, alone but not lonely, watching the world from a new perspective. The morning continues its unhurried pace around me, people coming and going like gentle waves upon a shore. A barista moves gracefully behind the counter, creating intricate patterns in the foam of a latte with practiced motions. The aroma of freshly ground coffee beans drifts throughout the space, rich and comforting. From where I lie, I can see the street outside, people walking by at various paces, some hurried, others taking their time to enjoy the morning. The cafe has a rhythm of its own, a gentle ebb and flow of customers seeking warmth and comfort. I continue to rest, my pages filled with stories waiting to be read or added to once again. The leather bookmark that rests between my pages marks the last entry my owner wrote, just yesterday evening beneath a lamp with a soft yellow glow. The writing spoke of anticipation for today, plans and dreams carefully outlined in blue ink that flowed smoothly across my lined pages. Now those plans continue somewhere else while I remain here, temporarily separated from the person whose thoughts I safeguard. The morning crowd begins to thin slightly as people depart for their daily responsibilities. A young woman approaches the window seat where I rest, drawn to the comfortable cushions and the warm patch of sunlight. She notices me immediately, her eyes curious, as she gently picks me up with careful hands. Someone's forgotten their journal. She murmurs softly to herself, turning me over to look for a name or contact information. My owner has written nothing on my exterior to identify themselves, preferring to keep my contents private and mysterious. The young woman carefully opens me to the first page where my owner has written simply, "My thoughts, dreams, and the journey between." She hesitates, clearly torn between curiosity and respect for privacy. After a moment of consideration, she closes me gently and places me on the table before her. She orders a chai latte from a passing server, then glances at me again with thoughtful eyes. The cafe continues its morning symphony around us, the hiss of steam, the murmur of conversation, the gentle tapping of fingers on laptop keyboards. I rest there on the wooden table, my presence a small mystery in this woman's otherwise ordinary morning. The young woman sips her chai slowly, occasionally glancing at me as though I might suddenly speak. The sunlight has moved now, creating dappled patterns through the leaves of a small potted plant on the windowsill. Time passes unhurriedly in this peaceful corner of the cafe. Eventually, the woman seems to make a decision, reaching for me once more with gentle hands. She opens me again, but this time turns past the first page to find a blank one near the back. From her bag, she produces a pen with smooth flowing ink the color of twilight. To whoever owns this journal, she writes in neat, rounded letters that contrast with my owner's flowing script. I found this on the window seat at Riverside Café on Tuesday morning. I've added my note and asked the staff to keep it safe behind the counter. May your thoughts always find their way back to you, a fellow dreamer. She adds a small sketch of a steaming cup of coffee beneath her note, a simple but lovely illustration. After finishing her note, she closes me carefully, her fingers lingering for a moment on my worn cover. She rises from her seat, carrying me gently to the counter where a barista with kind eyes and a warm smile greets her. I found this journal on the window seat. The young woman explains, handing me over with care. Someone has probably realized they've lost it by now and might come looking. Could you keep it safe behind the counter? The barista nods, accepting me with the same careful touch. Of course, we'll take good care of it until the owner returns, the barista assures her. The young woman smiles, seeming pleased with this resolution, and with a final glance in my direction, she departs the cafe. The barista places me carefully on a shelf beneath the counter, in a clean, dry spot away from the coffee grounds and splashing water. From this new vantage point, I can observe the comings and goings of feet and legs, hearing conversations in fragments as people order their drinks. The morning continues its peaceful progression, time flowing by like the gentle current of a stream. I rest in my new temporary home, the sounds of the cafe surrounding me like a soothing blanket of white noise. The grinding of coffee beans, the steaming of milk, the cheerful greetings of regular customers recognized by name. All these sounds create a rhythmic pattern that feels almost like a lullaby. The morning shifts gradually toward midday, the quality of light changing subtly as the sun rises higher in the sky. The pace of the cafe changes too, becoming busier as people come in seeking lunch and afternoon refreshment. The baristas work with practiced efficiency, their movements graceful and precise as they fill orders. The aroma of coffee mingles now with the scent of warm pastries and savory sandwiches. Conversations rise and fall around me like gentle waves, most too fragmented to follow from my place beneath the counter. I continue to wait patiently, as I have always done, ready to receive thoughts and reflections whenever I am needed. Time passes in its own unhurried way, measured in the comings and goings of customers and the changing light through the windows. Occasionally, someone approaches the counter asking if anything has been found: a phone, a scarf, a set of keys forgotten in the rush of modern life. But no one yet has come asking for a journal of thoughts and dreams. I remain in my quiet resting place, patient and still. The afternoon light begins to take on a golden quality again, this time with the warmth of approaching evening rather than the freshness of morning. The rhythm of the cafe changes once more as the afternoon crowd begins to thin. A new barista arrives for the evening shift, receiving instructions from those who have worked through the day. There's a journal under the counter. The morning barista explains, gesturing toward me. Someone left it on the window seat this morning. Keep it safe in case they come back for it. The evening barista, an older woman with silver-streaked hair and gentle hands, nods in understanding. During a quiet moment, she bends down to look at me with curious eyes. She carefully lifts me from my resting place, holding me with respectful hands that seem accustomed to handling books. She places me on the counter during a lull in customers, opening me carefully to the first page. She reads my owner's simple inscription, then carefully turns the pages until she discovers the note left by the young woman from the morning. A smile touches her lips as she reads the message and admires the small coffee cup sketch. Reaching for a pen from beside the register, she too decides to add her own brief message. What a wonderful tradition! She writes in elegant script that speaks of years of practice. A journal traveling between strangers, each adding a small piece of themselves. I hope you find your way home, little book. But what a journey you're having in the meantime. Margaret, evening barista who has kept journals for 40 years. She closes me gently, returning me to my safe place beneath the counter. The evening progresses slowly, the cafe gradually becoming quieter as the rush of the day subsides. Soft music plays from speakers mounted in corners of the ceiling, creating a peaceful atmosphere for those who linger over their drinks. Through the windows, the golden light of late afternoon begins to deepen into the rich hues of approaching sunset. The cafe takes on a different character in these later hours, becoming a haven of tranquility for those seeking a peaceful end to their day. I continue to rest and wait, my pages holding the thoughts of my owner, and now the brief messages from two strangers whose paths have crossed with mine for just a moment. The beautiful randomness of these connections feels like a kind of magic, a reminder of how we touch each other's lives in ways both seen and unseen. The evening barista, Margaret, occasionally glances in my direction during quiet moments, as though we share a special understanding. Perhaps she wonders about my owner and the thoughts carefully recorded on my pages. Perhaps she thinks of her own journals, keepers of her memories through 40 years of life's journey. As the evening deepens, the cafe prepares for closing. Tables are wiped clean, floors swept, machines cleaned and prepared for the next day. Margaret carefully places me in a small drawer near the register, alongside other forgotten items waiting to be reclaimed. "Good night, little journal," she whispers with a smile as she closes the drawer. "Perhaps tomorrow will bring you home." The lights of the cafe dim and everything grows quiet and still. In the darkness of the drawer, I rest peacefully, holding the thoughts and now the connections that have been entrusted to me. The night passes in darkness and silence, the cafe empty of people, but full of the lingering energy of the day's many conversations and connections. Morning arrives again, light gradually filtering through the windows as a new day begins. The opening staff arrives, turning on lights, starting machines, preparing for another day of serving comfort and connection to the community. The drawer where I rest remains closed for now, as the morning preparations take precedence. The familiar sounds of the cafe coming to life surround me once more, the grinding of fresh coffee beans, the clinking of cups being arranged, the quiet conversations of staff preparing for the day ahead. Soon the doors will open, and new possibilities will arrive with the first customers of the day. My journey continues, each moment bringing the potential for return or for new connections. I wait patiently, as journals have done for centuries, ready to receive, to hold, to remember. The drawer slides open as someone retrieves a lost scarf that shares my temporary home. Light falls across my cover once more as I am rediscovered by the morning staff. The journal from yesterday, one barista says to another, lifting me carefully from the drawer. We should keep it on the counter today where people can see it. Someone might be looking for it. I am placed in a more visible spot, on a small shelf behind the counter where lost items are displayed, in hopes of reuniting them with their owners. From this new vantage point, I can observe more of the cafe and its morning rhythm. The doors open and the first customers of the day arrive, bringing with them the energy and anticipation of a new beginning. The morning light grows stronger, illuminating the cafe with its warm glow. Another day begins, full of possibilities and potential connections. I continue to wait, patient and observant, as the world moves around me in its gentle, rhythmic way. The morning has passed in a peaceful flow of customers, conversations, and the comforting routines of the cafe. I remain on the shelf behind the counter, visible but unclaimed, watching the day unfold from my unique perspective. The lunch hour brings a new energy to the space, busier and more hurried than the relaxed pace of early morning. People line up for their midday refreshment, many checking phones or watches, conscious of the time in a way that morning visitors rarely are. The staff works with practiced efficiency, maintaining friendly smiles despite the increased tempo. A tall man with thoughtful eyes approaches the counter during a brief lull in the rush. He orders a simple black coffee and a sandwich, his voice soft but clear. As he waits for his order, his gaze wanders to the shelf where I rest among other forgotten items. "Is that a journal?" he asks the barista, curiosity evident in his tone. The barista nods, reaching for me with careful hands. "Someone left it yesterday morning," she explains, passing me to the man who accepts me with gentle reverence. "We're keeping it safe until the owner returns." The man holds me carefully, his long fingers tracing the worn edges of my cover with appreciation. "I'm a writer," he says quietly, almost to himself rather than the barista. "I've filled dozens of journals over the years. Each one becomes almost like a friend." The barista smiles at this, recognizing a kindred spirit perhaps. "Would you like to leave a note?" she suggests, gesturing to the pen beside the register. "A couple of people already have. It's becoming a bit of a traveling journal while it waits for its owner." The man's eyes light up at this idea, and he nods with enthusiasm. "What a wonderful thought," he says, accepting his coffee with one hand while still holding me carefully in the other. Do you mind if I take it to my table for a few minutes? I promise to return it before I leave. The barista agrees readily, sensing his genuine appreciation for the unexpected tradition that has begun. The man carries me to a quiet corner table, setting me down gently beside his coffee and sandwich. For a few moments, he simply sits, sipping his coffee and regarding me with thoughtful eyes. Then, with deliberate movements, he opens me carefully, reading the original inscription and the notes left by the young woman and the evening barista. A smile touches his lips as he reaches for a pen from his jacket pocket. With careful consideration, he begins to write in a steady, elegant hand that speaks of years of practice. To the keeper of this journal, and to all who find themselves reading these pages, he writes, "What a beautiful reminder that our stories, like our lives, sometimes intersect in unexpected ways. Our thoughts, once written, take on a life beyond ourselves. May your journal find its way back to you, but how wonderful that in its brief adventure, it has created this small community of strangers connected through words and compassion. Thomas, who has found and lost many things, but always treasures the stories." He adds a small sketch beside his note, a simple illustration of an open book with rays of light emanating from its pages. Finishing his coffee, he returns me carefully to the counter, thanking the barista for allowing him to participate in this unexpected exchange. "I hope the owner returns for it," he says as he prepares to leave. "But what a lovely journey it's having in the meantime." The barista returns me to my place on the shelf, and I continue my patient waiting as the afternoon progresses. The lunch rush gradually subsides, and the cafe returns to a more relaxed rhythm. Sunlight shifts across the floor as the day advances, creating patterns that slowly move and change. A group of students occupies a large table near the window, textbooks and laptops open before them as they study together in companionable focus. Two elderly friends share tea and conversation at a small table in the corner, their laughter occasionally rising above the ambient sounds of the cafe. The baristas move with practiced ease behind the counter, creating art in cups and sharing brief connections with each customer they serve. In the middle of the afternoon, a young man approaches the counter, his expression distracted and somewhat anxious. "I was wondering," he begins hesitantly, "if anyone has turned in a journal, brown leather cover about this size." He gestures with his hands, describing me perfectly. The barista's face brightens immediately, and she reaches for me on the shelf. "Yes, it was found yesterday morning," she says, carefully handing me over. "We've been keeping it safe for you." The young man's relief is palpable as his hands close around my familiar cover. "Thank you so much," he says, his voice warm with gratitude. "I've been retracing my steps all over town. I didn't realize I'd left it here until I went through everywhere I'd been yesterday." He holds me close, clearly comforted by my return. "You have no idea how important this is to me," he continues. "It contains thoughts and ideas I've been working on for months." The barista smiles, pleased by his obvious relief and happiness. "Several people have left notes in it," she explains somewhat apologetically. "It became a bit of a traveling journal while it waited for you. I hope you don't mind." Curiosity replaces anxiety in the young man's expression. "Really?" he asks, gently opening me to discover the notes that have been added to my pages. He reads each one carefully, a slow smile spreading across his face as he absorbs the unexpected additions to his personal journal. This is. He begins, then pauses, searching for the right words. This is actually wonderful. I never would have expected something like this. He looks up at the barista with genuine appreciation. Do you know who these people are? I'd like to thank them. The barista shakes her head. Just customers passing through like yourself. The morning shift mentioned that the first note was from a young woman, and I know Margaret, who works evenings, wrote the second one. The third was from a writer who was here earlier today. The young man nods thoughtfully, then reaches for a pen from his pocket. I'd like to add my own note if that's okay. A response to these kind strangers. The barista gestures encouragingly, and he opens me to a fresh page. To the gentle souls who found my journal and added their beautiful thoughts. He writes in the familiar handwriting that fills so many of my pages. What an unexpected gift to find upon reclaiming my lost companion. You've reminded me that even in moments of disconnection, we remain part of a compassionate community. Your words will now travel with me alongside my own thoughts, a reminder of kindness found in unexpected places. Thank you for caring for these pages and for adding your light to my journey. Michael, the grateful owner who will be more careful in cafes from now on. He adds a small sketch of a path winding through trees, simple but evocative. The barista watches with a warm smile, clearly touched by this conclusion to the small adventure. Would you like a coffee while you're here? She asks as he finishes writing. On the house, to celebrate the return of your journal. The young man Michael accepts gratefully, ordering a cappuccino and taking a seat by the window, the same spot where I was originally forgotten. He opens me once more, turning slowly through the pages, rereading his own entries and pausing thoughtfully at the notes left by strangers. The afternoon light falls across the table, illuminating the pages with a warm glow. Michael sips his cappuccino slowly, occasionally adding new thoughts to my pages, inspired perhaps by the unexpected connections that have occurred. For over an hour he remains, writing, reflecting, occasionally gazing out the window at the world passing by. When he finally prepares to leave, he carefully closes me and returns me to my familiar place in his messenger bag. He thanks the barista once more, leaving a generous tip in the jar by the register. I'll definitely be back, he says with a smile. This place now holds a special memory for me. With those parting words, he steps out into the late afternoon sunlight, carrying me with him once more. I have returned to my original purpose, the keeper of one person's thoughts and dreams. But now I carry something more, the brief but meaningful connections formed between strangers who never actually met. Michael walks thoughtfully through the streets, occasionally touching the outline of my cover through the fabric of his bag, as though reassuring himself that I am truly there. He makes his way to a small park, finding an empty bench beneath the spreading branches of an old oak tree. Settling comfortably, he removes me from his bag once more, opening me to read again the notes left by the kind strangers. The late afternoon light filters through the leaves above, creating dappled patterns across my pages as he reads. What an extraordinary thing, he murmurs softly to himself, his fingers tracing the words left by people he has never met and likely never will. He turns to a fresh page and begins to write again, his thoughts flowing freely. Today my journal returned to me, he writes, but it came back changed, carrying the fingerprints and thoughts of strangers who treated it with care and respect. There is something profoundly moving about this, the idea that objects can connect us across time and space, that kindness can be passed from person to person through something as simple as a forgotten book. He continues writing as the afternoon gradually deepens toward evening, his pen moving steadily across my pages, recording his reflections on connection, community, and the unexpected ways we touch each other's lives. Birds sing in the branches above, and a gentle breeze occasionally ruffles my pages. People pass by on nearby paths, engaged in their own stories, their own journeys. Michael remains absorbed in his writing, adding to the collection of thoughts and dreams that I safeguard. The warmth of the fading sunlight touches my pages with a golden glow as day begins its slow transition toward evening. Michael's writing gradually slows, and he pauses to watch the changing light through the leaves above. After a while, he gently closes me, returning me to the safety of his bag. He sits quietly for some time longer, simply observing the world around him with new appreciation. Perhaps he thinks of the strangers who held me briefly, who added their thoughts to his collection of memories. Perhaps he wonders about their lives, their stories, the journeys that briefly intersected with his own through the unexpected conduit of a forgotten journal. Eventually, he rises from the bench, stretching slightly after sitting for so long. With unhurried steps, he makes his way out of the park as shadows lengthen across the paths. I rest within his bag, carried close as I have been for many months, but now holding something more than just one person's private thoughts. I have become a small but meaningful point of connection between people who never actually met but who shared, for a brief moment, a common experience of compassion and care. Michael walks thoughtfully through the evening streets, making his way home as the city transitions from day to night. Streetlights begin to illuminate, creating pools of gentle light along the sidewalks. The rhythm of his walking is familiar and soothing, a cadence I have experienced many times before during our journeys together. The day's adventure has added a new layer to our relationship, a reminder that even the most personal objects can sometimes become unexpected bridges between people. As Michael reaches his apartment building, he pauses for a moment to look up at the darkening sky where the first stars are beginning to appear. A smile touches his lips, perhaps thinking of the serendipitous journey that occurred because of a moment's forgetfulness in a cafe. He enters the building, climbing the stairs to his home, carrying me with him as he has done countless times before. Inside his apartment, he sets his bag down carefully and removes me once more, placing me on his desk beside a small lamp. The warm glow of the lamplight falls across my cover as evening settles fully into night. Michael prepares a simple dinner, occasionally glancing toward where I rest on his desk, as though reassuring himself that I have truly returned. After eating, he settles into his comfortable chair, reaching for me once more. He opens me carefully, turning to the last blank page, and begins to write about the day's events from beginning to end. His writing is unhurried and reflective, exploring not just what happened, but what it means about connection, about community, about the unexpected ways we touch each other's lives. I wonder about them, he writes, these strangers who held my journal briefly, the young woman who found it first, the evening barista with 40 years of keeping journals, the writer who understands how these pages become like friends. I wonder what they would think if they knew how deeply their small acts of kindness have affected me, how their words will now travel with me, becoming part of my story. He continues writing until late into the evening, filling several pages with his thoughts and reflections. Eventually, the rhythm of his writing slows as fatigue begins to overtake him. He gently closes me, his fingers lingering for a moment on my worn cover. "Thank you," he whispers softly, though whether to me or to the strangers who briefly cared for me, it's impossible to know. He places me carefully on his bedside table before preparing for sleep. The lamplight casts a warm glow across my cover as the sounds of the apartment grow quiet. I rest peacefully beside him as he drifts into sleep, my pages holding not only his thoughts and dreams, but now also the brief connections formed with strangers through an act of forgetfulness and subsequent kindness. The night deepens around us, peaceful and still. Tomorrow will bring new experiences, new thoughts to record, new moments to remember. But tonight I rest. A simple journal that briefly became something more, a point of connection in a world where strangers seldom truly meet. The gentle rhythm of Michael's breathing fills the quiet room as sleep embraces him. And I remain, patient and present, ready to receive whatever thoughts tomorrow may bring. The morning arrives with soft light filtering through partially drawn curtains. Michael stirs, gradually awakening to a new day. I remain where he placed me the night before, on the bedside table within easy reach. He stretches slowly, then turns to look at me, a smile touching his lips as he remembers yesterday's unexpected adventure. His hand reaches out, fingers gently tracing the worn edges of my cover. "Good morning," he murmurs softly, as though speaking to an old friend. Perhaps in some ways that is what I have become. He rises unhurriedly, moving through his morning routine with practiced ease. Occasionally, his gaze drifts to where I rest on the bedside table, as though confirming that I have indeed returned from my brief journey. After preparing and enjoying a simple breakfast, he returns to the bedroom, lifting me carefully as he settles into the comfortable chair near the window. The morning light falls gently across my pages as he opens me once more. He turns first to the notes left by the strangers in the café, reading them again with the fresh perspective that a new day brings. His fingers trace the words thoughtfully, touching the different handwriting styles that now share space with his own familiar script. After a while, he turns to a fresh page and begins to write, recording his thoughts about this new morning and the lingering effects of yesterday's experience. "I keep thinking about connections," he writes, his pen moving smoothly across my lined pages. "How we move through life surrounded by strangers, rarely aware of the potential bonds that exist just beneath the surface. It took losing something personal, something that holds pieces of my inner self, to discover this small community of compassion. Now I find myself looking at the people I pass on the street differently, wondering about their stories, wondering how our lives might connect in ways we never anticipate." He continues writing for some time, his thoughts flowing freely in the quiet morning hours. The sunlight gradually strengthens, warming the room and illuminating my pages with clear, golden light. Outside the window, the city awakens fully, the sounds of life beginning to rise from the street below. Michael remains absorbed in his writing, adding to the collection of reflections and observations that I safeguard. Eventually, he closes me gently, rising from the chair with renewed purpose. "I think we should go back to the cafe," he says softly, perhaps speaking to me or perhaps simply thinking aloud. "I'd like to leave a proper thank you for the staff who kept you safe." He places me carefully in his messenger bag, the familiar leather worn smooth from years of use. I settle into my accustomed place as he prepares to leave the apartment. The morning air is crisp and invigorating as Michael steps outside, beginning the walk to the cafe where our recent adventure began. His pace is unhurried, allowing him to notice details that might otherwise be missed in a more rushed journey. He observes the people he passes with new interest, perhaps wondering about their stories, their connections, the invisible threads that might link their lives to his own. The cafe appears ahead, its large windows reflecting the morning sunlight. Michael approaches with a sense of anticipation, pushing open the door to be greeted by the familiar sounds and scents that define this welcoming space. The morning rush has subsided, leaving the cafe relatively quiet as he approaches the counter. The barista greets him with a smile of recognition. The journal owner returns, she says warmly. "How are you today?" Michael returns her smile, ordering a coffee and a pastry before asking, "Is Margaret working today? The evening barista who wrote in my journal." The morning barista shakes her head. "She won't be in until 4, but I can give her a message if you'd like." Michael nods thoughtfully, thanking her as he accepts his order. He finds a seat at the same window table where I was forgotten 2 days before. Removing me from his bag, he places me on the table and opens me to a fresh page. From his pocket, he produces a small card, which he carefully positions on my open pages. With deliberate care, he begins to write a note of thanks to the cafe staff and to the strangers who briefly cared for me during my time away from him. His writing is thoughtful and sincere, expressing gratitude for the unexpected connections that formed through this small adventure. When he finishes writing, he carefully removes the note from my pages, folding it and placing it in the envelope he has brought for this purpose. He addresses it simply to the cafe staff and journal caretakers before sealing it closed. Finishing his coffee, he returns to the counter, handing the envelope to the barista with a warm smile. "Would you mind sharing this with your colleagues and leaving it somewhere the other people who wrote in my journal might see it if they return?" The barista accepts the envelope with a nod, promising to display it prominently. Satisfied with this resolution, Michael returns me to his bag and departs the cafe once more. The day stretches before us, full of possibilities and potential new entries to add to my collection of thoughts and observations. We walk through the morning streets, Michael pausing occasionally to observe something that catches his attention: a flowering tree, a particularly interesting piece of architecture, the interaction between strangers at a crosswalk. Eventually, our wandering brings us to a small bookshop tucked between larger businesses on a quiet side street. Michael enters, the bell above the door announcing our arrival with a gentle chime. The shop smells of paper and binding glue, a scent both familiar and comforting. Shelves filled with books of all sizes create a labyrinth of literary treasures waiting to be discovered. Michael moves through the space with appreciation, occasionally removing a volume to examine its cover or read a few pages. In a quiet corner at the back of the shop, he discovers a small selection of blank journals displayed on a wooden table. He pauses, lifting several to feel their weight, to run his fingers across their covers, to examine the quality of their pages. After careful consideration, he selects one bound in soft blue leather with cream-colored pages, carrying it to the register along with two books he has chosen from the fiction section. The bookseller, an older man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, converses with Michael as he completes the purchase. The journal is a gift, Michael explains, for someone I've never met. The bookseller raises an eyebrow, intrigued by this unusual statement. Michael smiles, briefly recounting the story of my journey and return. So now I want to pass it forward, he concludes. Leave a blank journal for someone else to discover, along with an invitation to write their thoughts and perhaps leave it for yet another person to find. The bookseller nods with appreciation for this idea. What a lovely thought, he says as he carefully wraps the blue journal in tissue paper. Creating connections between strangers through the written word, Michael accepts the wrapped package, thanking the bookseller before departing the shop with his purchases. Outside, the day has warmed considerably, the sun now high in a clear sky. Michael finds a bench in a nearby plaza, settling comfortably as he removes me from his bag once more. Opening me to yet another fresh page, he begins to write about his plan for the blue journal, describing how he intends to leave it somewhere public with an invitation for others to add their thoughts before passing it along. And so the journey that began with my forgetfulness might continue through a deliberate act of connection. He writes, a new journal traveling intentionally from person to person, collecting thoughts and creating invisible bonds between strangers. He writes for some time, developing his idea more fully as people pass by the bench, engaged in their own stories, their own journeys. The plaza hums with gentle activity children playing near a small fountain, office workers enjoying lunch in the sunshine, tourists consulting maps and taking photographs. Michael observes it all with renewed interest, occasionally pausing in his writing to watch a particularly engaging interaction, or to simply appreciate the complex tapestry of human connection unfolding around him. The afternoon advances, as Michael continues to alternate between writing and observing. He records thoughts about connection and community, about the unexpected ways we touch each other's lives, about the potential for meaning in even the smallest interactions. My pages receive these reflections as they have received so many others, providing space for exploration of ideas and emotions. Eventually, he closes me gently, returning me to his bag as he rises from the bench. With purposeful steps, he makes his way back toward the café where our adventure began. The day has begun its slow transition toward evening, the quality of light softening as shadows lengthen. When Michael enters the café once more, he discovers that the shift has changed, and there behind the counter stands Margaret, the evening barista whose note graces my pages. Michael approaches with a warm smile, introducing himself. I'm the owner of the journal you wrote in, he explains. I wanted to thank you personally for keeping it safe and for adding your thoughts. Margaret's face brightens with recognition and pleasure. What a lovely surprise, she responds. I was hoping we might find out what happened to it. Did you read the notes we left? Their conversation flows easily as Margaret prepares the cappuccino Michael orders. He tells her about returning to leave a thank you note that morning, about the new journal he's purchased to continue the tradition. "What a wonderful idea," Margaret says with genuine enthusiasm, creating intentional connections in a world where we too often pass each other by without truly seeing one another. Margaret shares that she has kept journals for most of her life, filling dozens of volumes with thoughts, observations, and reflections. Each one becomes a time capsule. She explains as she carefully creates a delicate leaf pattern in the foam of Michael's cappuccino. "When I read entries from years ago, I rediscover parts of myself I had forgotten." Michael nods in understanding, accepting the beautifully prepared drink with appreciation. They continue their conversation during a lull between customers, discovering a shared interest in not just journaling, but also in poetry and photography, different ways of capturing moments and preserving them. "It's all about paying attention," Margaret observes thoughtfully, noticing the details that others might miss. Michael agrees, sipping his cappuccino slowly, savoring both the flavor and the unexpected connection with someone who understands this particular form of mindfulness. From his bag, he retrieves the carefully wrapped blue journal he purchased earlier. "Would you like to be the first to write in it?" he asks Margaret, "before I leave it somewhere for a stranger to find?" Her eyes light up at the invitation, and she accepts the package with careful hands. "I'd be honored," she says, unwrapping the tissue paper to reveal the soft blue leather cover. She opens it to the first blank page, the cream-colored paper waiting patiently for its first words. From her apron pocket, she produces a pen with smooth-flowing ink. To whoever finds this wandering journal, she writes in her elegant script, "You are now part of a chain of connection between strangers. Add your thoughts, keep it for a while if you wish, then leave it somewhere for another person to discover." In a world that moves too quickly, this is an invitation to pause, to reflect, to connect across time and space with people you may never meet. May your journey be rich with discovery. Margaret, who believes in the magic of handwritten words. She adds a small sketch of a bird in flight beneath her note, simple yet expressive. Michael watches with appreciation, honored to witness the beginning of this new journey. When Margaret finishes writing, she carefully closes the blue journal and returns it to its tissue paper wrapping. "Where will you leave it?" she asks as she hands it back to Michael. He considers for a moment before answering. "I'm not entirely sure yet," he admits. "Somewhere it will be found by someone who might appreciate it, perhaps in a park or a museum or maybe even here in the cafe." They continue discussing possibilities as customers begin to arrive more frequently, eventually saying goodbye with the warm familiarity of new friends, rather than mere acquaintances. Michael promises to return to the cafe regularly, perhaps even to share news if he ever learns what becomes of the blue journal. With a final wave, he departs, carrying me in his familiar bag and the new blue journal carefully protected in its wrapping. The evening has fully arrived now, the sky deepening toward twilight as streetlights begin to illuminate. Michael walks thoughtfully through the gathering dusk, considering where to leave the blue journal where it might begin its own journey of connection. Eventually, his steps lead him to the city's central library, a grand building with wide stone steps and tall columns framing the entrance. Inside, the space is hushed and peaceful, the air filled with the comforting scent of books and the soft sound of pages turning. Michael moves through the building with quiet purpose, eventually finding himself in a reading room, where comfortable chairs are arranged near tall windows. A few people occupy some of the seats, absorbed in their reading or writing, creating a community of solitary pursuits shared in one space. He selects an empty chair in a quiet corner, sitting down and removing both me and the blue journal from his bag. Opening me once more, he records his thoughts about this moment, about beginning a new tradition of connection, about his conversation with Margaret, about his hopes for where this idea might lead. It feels like completing a circle, he writes. What began accidentally now continues with intention, a small act of connection in a disconnected world. He writes unhurriedly, his pen moving steadily across my familiar pages. When he finishes writing, he carefully closes me and returns me to his bag. Then, with deliberate movements, he removes the tissue paper from the blue journal, opening it to display Margaret's elegant handwriting on the first page. He adds his own brief note beneath hers, inviting whoever finds the journal to continue the tradition of adding thoughts before passing it along. With a sense of ceremony, he places the open journal on the small table beside his chair, positioned so that the written invitation is clearly visible to anyone who might approach. Rising quietly, he steps away, finding a sheltered spot behind a tall bookshelf where he can observe without being obvious. For several minutes, nothing happens. People continue reading, writing, or quietly searching the shelves for literary treasures. Then, a young woman approaches the empty chair, clearly intending to claim the comfortable seat for herself. She notices the open journal immediately, pausing to read what is written on its pages. A smile touches her lips as she absorbs the invitation. After a moment's consideration, she sits down, reaching into her bag to produce a pen. Michael watches with quiet satisfaction as she begins to add her own thoughts to the journal's pages. The tradition continues. A new journey begins. Satisfied, he slips quietly from the library, stepping out into the evening with a sense of contentment. The night sky above is clear, stars beginning to appear as he makes his way home through streets now illuminated by streetlights and the warm glow from shop windows. I rest securely in his bag, carried close as always, now containing not just his thoughts, but the story of an unexpected adventure and the connections it created. Michael walks with unhurried steps, occasionally pausing to observe some detail of the night, the way light reflects on wet pavement, the graceful silhouette of a cat moving along a garden wall, the gentle murmur of conversation drifting from a restaurant patio. Upon reaching his apartment, he enters quietly, moving through familiar rooms with the comfort of returning to a space that feels truly his own. He prepares a simple dinner, occasionally touching the outline of my shape in his bag, as though reassuring himself that I remain there, safely returned from my brief journey into the world of strangers. After eating, he settles into his favorite chair, removing me once more to record final thoughts about this remarkable day. I wonder about the blue journal. He writes, his familiar handwriting flowing across my pages. Where it will go, whose hands will hold it, what thoughts it will collect. I wonder if I'll ever know its fate, or if it will simply travel on without me, creating connections I'll never see. Perhaps that's the beauty of it, that not all connections need to be visible to be meaningful. He continues writing until fatigue begins to soften the edges of his thoughts, his pen moving more slowly across the page. Eventually, he closes me gently, rising to prepare for sleep. He places me on the bedside table, where I have rested so many nights before. The lamp casts a warm glow across my worn cover as he settles into bed. "Good night," he murmurs softly, perhaps to me or perhaps simply to the day that is ending. His breathing gradually slows and deepens as sleep embraces him. I remain on the bedside table, keeper of his thoughts, and now of a story about connection, about the gentle ways we touch each other's lives sometimes without ever actually meeting. The night deepens around us, peaceful and still. Tomorrow will bring new experiences, new reflections to record, new moments to remember. But tonight I rest, a simple journal that briefly became something more, a point of connection in a world of strangers. The room grows quiet save for the gentle rhythm of Michael's breathing, and I remain patient and present, ready to receive whatever thoughts tomorrow may bring. Morning arrives with soft light and the gentle sounds of the world awakening. Michael stirs, gradually transitioning from sleep to wakefulness. His hand reaches out, touching my cover in what has become a morning ritual of reassurance. "Another day," he murmurs softly, stretching as he prepares to rise and begin his routine. I remain where he placed me the night before, on the bedside table within easy reach. The morning unfolds in its familiar pattern, the preparation of coffee, a simple breakfast, the quiet contemplation that Michael prefers during the early hours. Eventually, he returns to the bedroom, lifting me carefully as he settles into the comfortable chair near the window. The morning light falls gently across my pages as he opens me once more. He begins to write, not about plans for the day ahead, but about a dream that visited him during the night. "I dreamed of journals," he writes, his pen moving smoothly across my lined pages. "Hundreds of them, floating through the air like leaves in autumn, each one open to reveal handwritten pages. People stood below with upturned faces and outstretched hands, catching journals as they descended, reading the thoughts of strangers before releasing them to continue their flight. No one spoke, yet somehow everyone understood. It was communication of the deepest kind, wordless yet full of meaning." He continues describing the dream, exploring its possible significance, connecting it to the events of recent days. The sunlight strengthens as he writes, illuminating my pages with clear, golden light. Outside the window, the city awakens fully, the sounds of life beginning to rise from the street below. Michael remains absorbed in his writing, adding to the collection of reflections that I safeguard. "Perhaps," he writes after describing the dream in detail, "this is what we're all seeking, to be read, to be understood, to leave some record that we were here and that our thoughts mattered. The journal I left at the library last night is a small invitation to that kind of connection, a way of saying, these are my thoughts. What are yours? I wonder who is writing in it now, what they might be adding to the conversation." His writing gradually shifts from the dream to plans for the day ahead, which include a return to the café that has now become significant in our shared story. He mentions wanting to tell Margaret about leaving the blue journal in the library, about watching as the first new person discovered it and began to write. Eventually, he closes me gently, rising from the chair with decided purpose. He places me carefully in his messenger bag before preparing to leave the apartment. The morning air is fresh and invigorating as Michael steps outside, beginning the now familiar walk to the cafe. His pace is unhurried, allowing him to notice the small details that make each day unique: the quality of light, the pattern of clouds, the particular energy of people passing by. He observes it all with renewed interest, perhaps seeing the world differently since our unexpected adventure. The cafe appears ahead, its large windows reflecting the morning sunlight. Michael enters, greeted by the familiar sounds and scents. The morning barista recognizes him now, greeting him by name as he approaches the counter. "Is Margaret working today?" he asks after ordering his usual cappuccino. The barista nods, informing him that she'll be arriving for the afternoon shift. Michael thanks her, finding a seat at what has become his regular table by the window. He removes me from his bag, opening me to continue recording his thoughts as he waits for his coffee. He writes about the library, describing in greater detail the moment when the young woman discovered the blue journal and began to add her contribution. He wonders about her, about what she might have written, about where she might choose to leave the journal for the next person to find. The barista brings his cappuccino, the foam decorated with an intricate spiral pattern. As he sips his coffee, Michael continues writing, his observations flowing easily across my pages. He describes the cafe from my perspective, how it might appear to an object that rests on tables and in hands, that observes without participating, that holds the thoughts of those who use it. "A journal sees the world differently," he writes. "It witnesses moments of both solitude and connection, becoming a silent companion in times of reflection and a keeper of memories that might otherwise fade." The morning passes quietly as Michael alternates between writing and observing the life of the cafe around him. People come and go, some hurried and distracted, others lingering over conversations or books. He records snippets of overheard dialogue, descriptions of particularly interesting customers, reflections on the rhythm of the space. His writing is unhurried and contemplative, finding meaning in these ordinary moments. As midday approaches, the cafe begins to fill with the lunch crowd. Michael closes me gently, returning me to his bag as he rises to make room for those seeking tables. He decides to take a walk through the nearby park while waiting for Margaret's shift to begin. The day has warmed pleasantly, sunlight filtering through the leaves of trees that line the park's winding paths. Michael walks slowly, observing the variety of people enjoying the green space: children playing, elderly couples on benches, office workers taking lunch breaks on the grass. He finds an empty bench in a quiet area, sitting down to remove me from his bag once more. Opening me to a fresh page, he continues his observations and reflections. The park offers new inspiration: the interaction between humans and nature, the different rhythms that exist here compared to the more urban spaces. Just beyond the park's boundaries, time passes peacefully as Michael writes, the sun moving gradually across the sky. Eventually, he checks his watch, realizing that Margaret's shift will have begun at the cafe. He closes me carefully, returning me to his bag as he rises from the bench. With unhurried steps, he makes his way back through the park toward the cafe that has become so significant in our shared story. Upon entering, he immediately notices Margaret behind the counter, her silver-streaked hair catching the afternoon light. She looks up as the door opens, her face brightening with recognition as she sees Michael. He approaches with a warm smile, ordering another cappuccino as he greets her. "I left the blue journal in the library last night," he tells her as she prepares his drink, "and I waited to see who would find it first." Margaret's eyes light up with interest as she listens to Michael describe the young woman who discovered the journal, how she read the invitation, and immediately began to add her own thoughts. "So it's begun its journey," Margaret says with satisfaction, carefully creating a leaf pattern in the foam of Michael's cappuccino. "I wonder where it will go from here." They share theories and hopes for the Blue Journal's travels as Michael accepts his beautifully prepared drink. During a quiet moment between customers, Margaret shares a thought that occurred to her after their conversation the previous day. "I was thinking about starting a journal circle here at the cafe," she explains. "A small collection of notebooks that regular customers could contribute to. Different themes, perhaps one for poetry, one for travel stories, one for daily observations. A way of creating community through shared writing." Michael responds with enthusiasm, offering suggestions and ideas to develop the concept further. Their conversation flows easily, two people connected by a shared appreciation for the written word and the connections it can create. "I'd be happy to contribute to your journal circle," Michael tells her, "and perhaps to help spread the word among other cafe regulars." Margaret expresses gratitude for his support, mentioning that she plans to speak with the cafe owner the following day. "I think it could become something special," she says with quiet confidence. "Something that makes this place even more of a haven for people seeking connection." Michael agrees, sipping his cappuccino slowly as they continue to discuss possibilities. Their conversation is interrupted occasionally as customers arrive, Margaret moving with practiced grace to prepare drinks and serve pastries. During these moments, Michael opens me once more, recording thoughts about this new development, about how a single forgotten journal has inspired ideas that might create even more connections among strangers. He writes about the potential ripple effects of small actions, about how meaning can emerge from even the most ordinary circumstances. The afternoon light begins to soften as Michael continues alternating between conversation with Margaret during quiet moments and writing when she is busy with customers. He records thoughts about community, about the different ways people seek and create connection in an increasingly digital world. "Perhaps this is why cafes remain so important," he writes. "They provide a physical space where strangers can exist together, where the possibility of unexpected connection remains alive." Eventually, as afternoon begins its gradual transition toward evening, Michael prepares to leave. He and Margaret say goodbye with the warmth of new friends, promising to continue their conversation about the journal circle when he returns. Michael steps out into the softening light of late afternoon, carrying me securely in his bag as he begins his walk home. The city has a different quality in these hours, a gentle winding down from the busy energy of midday, a transitional space between work and rest. Michael walks at an unhurried pace, occasionally pausing to observe something that catches his attention, the way light reflects from office windows, a particularly beautiful arrangement of flowers in a shop display, the changing colors of the sky as evening approaches. When he reaches his apartment, He enters quietly, moving through the familiar rooms with the comfort of returning to a space that truly feels like home. He prepares a simple dinner, occasionally touching the outline of my shape in his bag, a gesture that has become almost unconscious. After eating, he settles into his favorite chair, removing me once more to record final thoughts about this day. It's remarkable, he writes, how a single moment of forgetfulness has created so many ripples. The journal I left behind became a point of connection with strangers. That experience inspired the blue journal now traveling from person to person. And that, in turn, has sparked Margaret's idea for a journal circle at the cafe. From one small accident, all these possibilities for connection have emerged. He continues writing until fatigue begins to soften the edges of his thoughts, his pen moving more slowly across the page. I wonder what other ripples might be forming even now, he writes as his entry draws to a close. Connections I may never see or know about, but that exist because of this unexpected chain of events. He adds a final thought before closing me for the night. Perhaps that's the most beautiful part, that we touch each other's lives in ways we can never fully know. With gentle movements, he closes me and rises to prepare for sleep. He places me on the bedside table where I have rested so many nights before. The lamp casts a warm glow across my worn cover as he settles into bed. "Good night," he murmurs softly, perhaps to me or perhaps simply to the day that is ending. His breathing gradually slows and deepens as sleep embraces him. I remain on the bedside table, keeper of his thoughts and now of a story about connection, about the gentle ways we touch each other's lives, sometimes without ever actually meeting. The night deepens around us, peaceful and still. Tomorrow will bring new experiences, new reflections to record, new moments to remember. But tonight I rest, a simple journal that briefly became something more, a point of connection in a world of strangers. The room grows quiet save for the gentle rhythm of Michael's breathing, and I remain patient and present, ready to receive whatever thoughts tomorrow may bring. The gentle transition from night to dawn brings a new day, light gradually filtering through the window to touch my cover with its soft glow. Michael stirs, awakening slowly as he has on countless mornings. His hand reaches out in what has become a ritual, fingers gently tracing the edges of my cover. "Good morning," he murmurs softly, perhaps speaking to me or perhaps simply greeting the new day. He rises unhurriedly, moving through his morning routine with practiced ease. After breakfast, he settles in the chair near the window, lifting me carefully from the bedside table. The morning light falls across my pages as he opens me once more, ready to record the thoughts that have come with awakening. "I dreamed of the blue journal again," he writes, his pen moving smoothly across my lined pages. "It was traveling around the world, passing from hand to hand, growing thicker with each new entry. In the dream, I could see all the people who held it, their faces illuminated as they read the thoughts of strangers and added their own. They never met, yet they knew each other in some essential way." He continues describing the dream, exploring its significance, connecting it to his waking thoughts about connection and community. "I wonder where the real blue journal is now," he writes, "who might be holding it, reading the words Margaret and I wrote, perhaps adding their own thoughts before passing it along. I like to imagine it creating a web of invisible connections, each person who touches it becoming part of something larger than themselves, even if they never realize the full extent of it. The sunlight strengthens as he writes, illuminating my pages with clear, golden light. Outside the window, the city awakens fully, the sounds of life beginning to rise from the street below. Michael continues writing, shifting from reflections on his dream to plans for the day ahead, which include a return to the cafe to learn whether Margaret has spoken with the owner about her journal circle idea. Eventually, he closes me gently, rising from the chair with decided purpose. He places me carefully in his messenger bag before preparing to leave the apartment. The morning air is fresh and invigorating as Michael steps outside, beginning what has become a familiar journey to the cafe that now holds special significance. His pace is unhurried, allowing him to notice and appreciate the small details that make each day unique. When he arrives at the cafe, he finds it busier than usual, many tables occupied by people engaged in conversation or focused on books and laptops. He approaches the counter, greeted warmly by a barista he hasn't met before. "Is Margaret working today?" he asks after ordering his usual cappuccino. The barista nods, explaining that she's in the back speaking with the owner but should be out soon. Michael thanks him, finding an empty table near the window to wait. He removes me from his bag, opening me to continue recording his thoughts as he observes the life of the cafe around him. He writes about the different people sharing this space, a young couple leaning close in conversation, an elderly man reading a newspaper with careful attention, a group of students with textbooks spread across a large table. We create temporary communities in places like this, he writes. Strangers sharing space, existing alongside one another for brief periods before continuing on separate paths. As he writes, he notices Margaret emerging from the back room, followed by a man he assumes must be the cafe owner. Both are smiling, suggesting their conversation has gone well. Margaret spots Michael immediately, her face brightening as she approaches his table. "Good news," she says without preamble, settling into the chair across from him. "Paolo loves the journal circle idea. We're going to start next week." The owner Paolo joins them briefly, introducing himself to Michael with a warm handshake. "Margaret tells me you're the one who inspired this with your forgotten journal," he says with genuine interest. What a wonderful thing to come from a simple moment of forgetfulness. They discuss the concept further, how the journals will be displayed, what themes they might suggest, how to invite regular customers to participate. Paolo expresses enthusiasm for creating more community connection through his cafe. "We've been here for 15 years, he explains, gesturing to the space around them. "And I've always wanted it to be more than just a place where people buy coffee. I want it to be somewhere people feel they belong." Michael nods in understanding, sharing his own thoughts about how spaces like this can foster unexpected connections. Paolo listens with appreciation before excusing himself to return to work, leaving Michael and Margaret to continue their conversation. As they talk, the barista brings Michael's cappuccino, the foam decorated with an intricate heart pattern. Margaret shares her ideas for the journal circle in greater detail, different colored notebooks for different themes, a small bookshelf near the window to display them, perhaps even occasional gatherings where contributors could meet in person. Michael offers suggestions and support, clearly invested in helping this idea flourish. Their conversation flows easily, occasionally pausing when Margaret needs to return to work during busy moments. During these interruptions, Michael continues writing in my pages, recording thoughts about how ideas spread from person to person, about the potential for creating meaningful connections in seemingly ordinary spaces. It's remarkable, he writes, how quickly this has evolved from a forgotten journal to a potential community of writers sharing thoughts and stories. As their conversation resumes during a quiet moment, Margaret mentions something unexpected. A young woman came in yesterday afternoon, she tells Michael. She asked if anyone had started a journal project recently. She described finding a blue leather journal in the library with an invitation to add her thoughts and pass it along. Michael's expression brightens immediately, leaning forward with interest. "What did she say?" he asks eagerly. "She told me she'd written in it and left it at the botanical gardens." Margaret continues with a smile. "She said she'd been so moved by the idea that she wanted to know if it had originated here. I told her about your forgotten journal and how it had inspired the blue one. She seemed delighted by the whole story." Michael listens with wonder, amazed that news of the blue journal has already found its way back to them. "Did she say what she wrote?" he asks curiously. Margaret shakes her head. She didn't share the specifics, only that she'd written about connection and serendipity. She said leaving it for someone else to find felt like sending a message in a bottle. You don't know who will find it or when, but there's something magical in the possibility. Michael nods in agreement, clearly moved by this unexpected update. They continue talking about the blue journal and its journey, speculating about who might find it at the botanical gardens and where it might travel next. "It's creating its own story now," Margaret observes thoughtfully, "independent of us, but still connected in some essential way." Michael agrees, adding that perhaps this is true of all things we create and release into the world. They continue on paths we can't predict, touching lives we may never know. The afternoon progresses as they alternate between conversation and Margaret's work responsibilities. Michael occasionally opens me to record new thoughts or observations, particularly about the young woman who had found the blue journal and her description of it feeling like a message in a bottle. "There's something profound in that comparison," he writes. "Both involve an act of faith that your words will find the right recipient, that connection is possible even across distance and time." Eventually, as the afternoon begins to wane, Michael prepares to leave. He and Margaret say goodbye with the familiarity of friends, making plans to meet again the following week when the journal circle officially begins. "I'm thinking of visiting the botanical gardens tomorrow," Michael tells her with a smile, "just to see if the blue journal is still there or if it's already continued its journey." Margaret nods in understanding, wishing him luck in his search. Michael steps out into the softening light of late afternoon, carrying me securely in his bag. As he begins his walk home, the city has a gentle quality in these hours, the harsh edges of midday softened by the approaching evening. He walks at an unhurried pace, his mind clearly full of thoughts about journals and connections, about messages in bottles and words finding their recipients. When he reaches his apartment, he enters quietly, moving through the familiar rooms with the comfort of returning to a space that truly feels like home. He prepares a simple dinner, occasionally touching the outline of my shape in his bag, a gesture that has become almost unconscious over time. After eating, he settles into his favorite chair, removing me once more to record final thoughts about this remarkable day. It feels like a circle completing. He writes, his familiar handwriting flowing across my pages. My forgotten journal led to connections with strangers. That inspired the blue journal, which has already been found and continued on its journey. And now Margaret's journal circle will create even more possibilities for connection at the cafe. From one small moment of forgetfulness, all of this has emerged. He continues writing until fatigue begins to soften the edges of his thoughts, his pen moving more slowly across the page. Tomorrow, I'll visit the botanical gardens. He writes as his entry draws to a close, not with any real expectation of finding the blue journal still there, but simply to be part of its journey in some small way. To walk where it has been, to perhaps sit where someone read it and added their thoughts. There's something meaningful in that, even if our paths never actually cross. He adds a final thought before closing me for the night. We are all connected by invisible threads, some we recognize and some we may never know exist. With gentle movements, he closes me and rises to prepare for sleep. He places me on the bedside table, where I have rested so many nights before. The lamp casts a warm glow across my worn cover as he settles into bed. Good night, he murmurs softly, perhaps to me or perhaps simply to the day that is ending. His breathing gradually slows and deepens as sleep embraces him. I remain on the bedside table, keeper of his thoughts and now of a story about connection, about the gentle ways we touch each other's lives, sometimes without ever actually meeting. The night deepens around us, peaceful and still. Tomorrow will bring new experiences, new reflections to record, new moments to remember. But tonight, I rest, a simple journal that briefly became something more, a point of connection in a world where strangers seldom truly meet. The room grows quiet save for the gentle rhythm of Michael's breathing, and I remain patient and present, ready to receive whatever thoughts tomorrow may bring. Morning arrives once more, light gradually filtering through the window to touch my cover with its gentle glow. Michael awakens slowly, his hand reaching out in our familiar ritual, fingers tracing the worn edges of my cover. Today we visit the gardens. He murmurs softly as he rises to begin his morning routine. There is a quiet anticipation in his movements, a sense of continuation in this unexpected journey that began with a moment of forgetfulness in a cafe. After breakfast, he settles in the chair near the window, lifting me carefully from the bedside table. The morning light illuminates my pages as he opens me to record his thoughts at the beginning of this new day. I've been thinking about journeys, he writes, his pen moving smoothly across my lined pages. How some are planned with care and intention, while others begin with unexpected moments, a forgotten item, a wrong turn, a chance encounter. Often it's these unplanned journeys that lead us to the most meaningful discoveries. He continues writing about journeys and discoveries, about intentions and serendipity, about the Blue Journal's travels and his own parallel path. I feel connected to this object I no longer possess, he writes. This journal that Margaret and I sent into the world with an invitation for others to add their thoughts. I wonder about those who have held it, what they've written, how they've continued its journey. In some essential way, we are all part of the same story now, even if we never meet. The sunlight strengthens as he writes, casting warm patterns across my pages. Outside the window, the city awakens fully to a new day. Michael eventually closes me gently, rising from the chair with decided purpose. He places me carefully in his messenger bag before preparing to leave the apartment. Today's destination is the Botanical Gardens, a place he hopes might still hold traces of the Blue Journal's presence. The morning air is fresh and clear as Michael steps outside, beginning his journey across the city to the gardens. His pace is unhurried yet purposeful, allowing him to notice and appreciate the world around him while maintaining a sense of anticipation about what he might discover. The city gradually gives way to greener spaces as he approaches the gardens, trees becoming more numerous, traffic sounds fading into the background. When he arrives at the Botanical Gardens, he pauses at the entrance, taking a moment to absorb the peaceful atmosphere of this carefully tended natural space. Pathways wind through collections of plants from around the world, benches placed strategically to allow visitors to rest and observe. Michael enters with a sense of quiet excitement, wondering where in this expansive space the young woman might have left the blue journal. He walks slowly along the main path, observing each bench, each quiet corner, where someone might pause to read or write. The gardens are relatively quiet on this weekday morning, only a few visitors walking the paths or seated among the plants. Michael continues his gentle exploration, eventually finding himself in a secluded area dedicated to flowering shrubs from around the world. In this quiet corner, he discovers a small wooden gazebo with bench seating around its interior. The structure is empty of people, peaceful and inviting. He enters, settling on one of the benches as he removes me from his bag. Opening me to a fresh page, he begins to record his thoughts about this place, about his search for traces of the Blue Journal's journey. Even if I don't find it, he writes, there's something meaningful in following its path, in visiting the places where it has been. A kind of connection across time and space with those who have held it, read it, added their thoughts to its pages. As he writes, an older gentleman enters the gazebo, nodding politely as he takes a seat on the opposite bench. For a while, they share the space in companionable silence, each engaged in their own thoughts, Michael writing in my pages, the older man simply observing the gardens through the open sides of the gazebo. Eventually, the man speaks, his voice gentle and cultured. You're writing in your journal, he observes. I've always found that a most rewarding practice. Michael looks up with a smile, a conversation beginning between these two strangers brought together by chance in a quiet corner of the gardens. They talk of journals and writing, of the value of recording thoughts and observations. Michael finds himself sharing the story of my journey, how I was forgotten in a cafe, how strangers added their thoughts before I was reclaimed, how this inspired the blue journal that now travels from person to person. The older gentleman listens with evident interest, his eyes brightening as the story unfolds. When Michael mentions the blue journal being left at these very gardens, the man's expression changes to one of delighted surprise. A blue leather journal with cream-colored pages. he asks. Michael nods eagerly, leaning forward. Yes, exactly. Have you seen it? The man smiles, reaching into his own bag to produce a familiar object, the blue leather journal that Margaret and Michael had sent on its journey of connection. I believe this might be what you're looking for, says, holding it carefully. I found it here yesterday on this very bench. I've been carrying it with me, trying to decide where it should go next. Michael stares in amazement at this extraordinary coincidence, this unexpected intersection of journeys. May I? He asks, gesturing toward the blue journal. The man passes it to him with careful hands. Michael opens it reverently, finding the familiar handwriting of Margaret on the first page, followed by his own note. Then comes the entry from the young woman who had found it in the library, her thoughts about connection and serendipity flowing across the page in neat, rounded handwriting. And following that, a new entry from the older gentleman himself, his elegant script speaking of wisdom and thoughtful observation. It's remarkable, the man says softly as Michael reads. When I found this journal yesterday, I spent hours reading the entries and adding my own thoughts. I've been carrying it with me, feeling a responsibility to continue its journey, but uncertain where it should go next. And now here, you are one of its creators sitting beside me in this quiet corner of the gardens. Michael nods, equally moved by this extraordinary coincidence. They continue their conversation, sharing thoughts about connection and community, about the way objects can create bridges between strangers. The older gentleman introduces himself as Robert, a retired literature professor who has kept journals for most of his life. There's something almost sacred about handwritten thoughts, he observes. Something technology can never quite replicate. The unique handwriting, the pressure of pen on paper, the intimate connection between mind and hand and page. Michael agrees, sharing his own thoughts about journaling and the unexpected journey that began with my being forgotten in the cafe. They talk for nearly an hour, two strangers connected by a blue leather journal and a shared appreciation for the written word. Eventually, Robert mentions that he plans to travel to another city the following day. Perhaps the journal should continue its journey with me, he suggests. I could leave it somewhere there, allowing it to create connections in a new place. Michael expresses enthusiasm for this idea, appreciating how the blue journal's reach would extend beyond their immediate community. That would be wonderful, he says. To think of it traveling to new places, being found by people with different perspectives and experiences. Robert nods thoughtfully, clearly pleased with this continuation of the journal's journey. They eventually say goodbye with the warmth of new friends, rather than mere acquaintances who met by chance. Robert carefully returns the blue journal to his bag, promising to continue its journey with thoughtful intention. Michael watches him walk away along the garden path, carrying this traveling repository of connections to its next destination. For a while, Michael remains in the gazebo, recording this extraordinary encounter in my pages. Of all the people who might have found the blue journal, he writes, it was discovered by someone who truly understands and values the significance of written reflection. And of all the moments our paths might have crossed, it happened exactly when we both occupied this same quiet space. There's something that feels almost destined about this intersection, this closing of a circle that opens into new possibilities. The morning light shifts through the leaves surrounding the gazebo, creating patterns of light and shadow that move gently across my pages as Michael continues writing. He records his conversation with Robert in detail, capturing the essence of their connection and the extraordinary coincidence of their meeting. It feels like confirmation, he writes, that the connections we create, even with strangers we may never meet, have meaning and purpose. That something as simple as a forgotten journal can become a catalyst for unexpected community. Eventually, Michael closes me gently, returning me to his bag as he rises to continue exploring the gardens. He walks the winding paths with a sense of peaceful satisfaction, observing the carefully tended plants and occasional wildlife with appreciative attention. The gardens offer a different rhythm from the busy city beyond its boundaries, slower, more contemplative, attuned to the gradual processes of growth and change. After some time, Michael finds himself at the Garden Café, a small establishment offering refreshments to visitors. He orders tea and a simple pastry, finding a table beside large windows overlooking a pond where water lilies float on the surface. Removing me from his bag once more, he continues recording thoughts and observations about this remarkable morning. The unexpected meeting with Robert feels significant, a moment of synchronicity in an increasingly disconnected world. I wonder where the blue journal will travel next, he writes as he sips his tea. What new thoughts will be added to its pages? What new connections it might create between strangers? There's something beautiful about releasing it into the world without knowing its full journey, trusting that it will find its way to the right people at the right moments. He continues writing as afternoon approaches, his thoughts flowing easily in this peaceful environment. Eventually, he closes me gently, finishing his tea before rising to continue his exploration of the gardens. The day has warmed pleasantly, sunlight filtering through the canopy of trees that line many of the paths. Michael walks slowly, observing the variety of plants with thoughtful appreciation. Time seems to move differently here, measured in the opening of flowers and the gentle movement of leaves in the breeze rather than in minutes and hours. As afternoon begins its gradual transition toward evening, Michael makes his way toward the garden exit, carrying me securely in his bag. He walks with the peaceful contentment of someone who has experienced something meaningful and unexpected. The city beyond the garden boundaries seems somehow different now, still busy and hurried, but perhaps containing more possibilities for connection than might be immediately apparent. When he reaches his apartment, he enters quietly, moving through the familiar rooms with the comfort of returning to a space that truly feels like home. He prepares a simple dinner, occasionally touching the outline of my shape in his bag, a gesture that has become almost unconscious over time. After eating, he settles into his favorite chair, removing me once more to record final thoughts about this extraordinary day. It feels like a story completing itself, he writes, his familiar handwriting flowing across my pages. The blue journal that began its journey from my hands has circled back, if only briefly, before continuing onward with Robert. In that moment of reconnection, something meaningful was confirmed, that our efforts to create connection in an often disconnected world matter, that small actions can create ripples we may never fully see. He continues writing until fatigue begins to soften the edges of his thoughts. his pen moving more slowly across the page. "Tomorrow I'll return to the cafe," he writes as his entry draws to a close. "I want to share this remarkable coincidence with Margaret, to tell her about Robert and how the Blue Journal is now traveling to another city. There's something deeply satisfying in knowing that this story continues to unfold in unexpected ways." With gentle movements, he closes me and rises to prepare for sleep. He places me on the bedside table, where I have rested so many nights before. The lamp casts a warm glow across my worn cover as he settles into bed. "Good night," he murmurs softly, perhaps to me or perhaps simply to the day that is ending. His breathing gradually slows and deepens as sleep embraces him. I remain on the bedside table, keeper of his thoughts, and now of a story about connection, about the gentle ways we touch each other's lives, sometimes through objects that pass from hand to hand. The night deepens around us, peaceful and still. Tomorrow will bring new experiences, new reflections to record, new moments to remember. But tonight I rest, a simple journal that briefly became something more, a point of connection in a world where strangers seldom truly meet. The room grows quiet save for the gentle rhythm of Michael's breathing, and I remain, patient and present, ready to receive whatever thoughts tomorrow may bring. The gentle transition from night to morning brings another day, light gradually filling the room with its soft presence. Michael stirs, awakening slowly as he has on countless mornings. His hand reaches out in our familiar ritual, fingers gently tracing the edges of my cover before he rises to begin his day. Morning unfolds in its usual pattern, the preparation of coffee, a simple breakfast, quiet moments of contemplation. Eventually, he settles in the chair near the window, lifting me carefully from the bedside table. The morning light illuminates my pages as he opens me to record his first thoughts of the day. "I dreamed of journals again," he writes, his pen moving smoothly across my lined pages. But this time they weren't floating through the air. Instead, they were like stepping stones across a wide river, each one providing safe passage to the next. People crossed from one side to another, never falling into the water below, guided by these bridges of thought and connection. He explores the possible meaning of this dream, connecting it to recent experiences and to his evolving thoughts about community and connection. "Perhaps," he writes after describing the dream in detail, "this is what journals can be, stepping stones that help us navigate from one understanding to another, bridges that connect different perspectives and experiences." The Blue Journal is creating such bridges between strangers, allowing them to cross into each other's thoughts in ways that might not otherwise be possible. The sunlight strengthens as he writes, casting warm patterns across my pages. Outside the window, the city awakens fully to a new day. Michael eventually closes me gently, rising from the chair with decided purpose. He places me carefully in his messenger bag before preparing to leave the apartment. Today's destination is once again the cafe, where he hopes to share yesterday's extraordinary coincidence with Margaret. The morning air is fresh and clear as Michael steps outside, beginning the now familiar journey to the cafe that has become so significant in our shared story. His pace is unhurried yet purposeful, allowing him to notice and appreciate the world around him, while maintaining a sense of anticipation about the conversation to come. The city hums with its usual energy, people hurrying to work, delivery trucks making morning rounds, shops opening for the day's business. When he arrives at the cafe, he finds it moderately busy with the morning crowd. He approaches the counter, pleased to see Margaret already at work preparing drinks with her usual graceful efficiency. She looks up as he approaches, her face brightening with recognition. "You're earlier than usual," she observes with a warm smile. "Did you visit the gardens yesterday?" Michael nods eagerly, barely able to contain his excitement about what happened. "You won't believe it," he says as he orders his usual cappuccino. "I actually met the person who found the blue journal." Margaret's eyes widen with surprise and delight. "Really? Tell me everything," she encourages as she begins preparing his drink. Michael briefly explains that he'll share the full story once she has a free moment, understanding that the morning rush requires her attention. He finds his usual table by the window, removing me from his bag as he waits, opening me to a fresh page. He begins to organize his thoughts about yesterday's extraordinary coincidence, wanting to capture every detail to share with Margaret. The cafe continues its morning rhythm around him, the hiss of steam, the grinding of coffee beans, the murmur of conversations. Michael observes it all with renewed appreciation, seeing this ordinary space through the lens of the connections it has helped create. Eventually, the morning rush subsides, and Margaret approaches his table during a well-deserved break, carrying her own cup of tea. "Now," she says as she settles into the chair across from him, "tell me everything about this meeting at the gardens." Michael recounts the story with genuine enthusiasm, his quiet search through the gardens, the peaceful gazebo where he paused to write, the arrival of Robert, and the extraordinary moment when the older gentleman produced the very blue journal they had sent into the world. Margaret listens with evident delight, occasionally asking questions or expressing amazement at the coincidence. "Of all the people who might have found it," she says, echoing Michael's own thoughts from the previous day, "and of all the moments your paths might have crossed, it's remarkable." They discuss the significance of this intersection, this closing of a circle that opens into new possibilities. "And now the journal is traveling to another city," Michael explains as their conversation continues. "Robert is taking it with him, planning to leave it somewhere there for a new person to discover." Margaret nods with appreciation for this continuation of their unexpected project. "I wonder where it will go from there," she muses. "How far it might travel, how many thoughts it might collect." They continue discussing the Blue Journal's journey and the upcoming journal circle that will soon begin at the cafe. Paolo, the owner, joins them briefly, equally fascinated by the story of the traveling journal and its brief return to one of its creators. "We should keep track somehow," he suggests, "perhaps a map on the wall, marking places where we know the journal has been. If people contact the cafe to share where they found it or left it." Michael and Margaret respond enthusiastically to this idea, discussing how it might work, how they might include a note in the Blue Journal inviting finders to contact the cafe if they wish. Paolo eventually returns to work, leaving them to continue developing these thoughts. Their conversation flows easily, two people connected by a shared appreciation for the written word and the communities it can create. As they talk, the cafe continues its daily rhythm around them, customers coming and going, the familiar sounds of an establishment dedicated to comfort and connection. Michael occasionally opens me to record particularly significant thoughts or ideas that emerge from their conversation. The morning gradually transitions toward midday, sunlight shifting across the floor as time passes in its unhurried way. Eventually, Margaret needs to return to work as the lunch crowd begins to arrive. Michael remains at his table, continuing to write in my pages, recording thoughts about community and connection, about objects that travel between strangers creating invisible bonds, about the unexpected ways meaning emerges from ordinary moments. The cafe buzzes with renewed energy as people seek refreshment and perhaps a brief respite from their daily responsibilities. As afternoon approaches, Michael prepares to leave, knowing that Margaret will become increasingly busy with customers. They say goodbye with the warmth of friends who share something meaningful, promising to speak again soon about the journal circle's official beginning the following week. Michael steps out into the midday sunlight, carrying me securely in his bag as he begins a leisurely walk through the city. Without any particular destination in mind, he wanders thoughtfully through streets and parks, occasionally pausing to observe something interesting or beautiful. At one point, he finds an empty bench in a small urban plaza, settling there to remove me from his bag once more. Opening me to continue his reflections, he writes about the expanding circles of connection that have emerged from that initial moment of forgetfulness. It's like dropping a stone in water, he writes, his pen moving steadily across my pages. The ripples continue outward in ways we can't predict or control. My forgotten journal led to connections with strangers at the cafe. That inspired the blue journal, which has already traveled to unexpected places and will soon leave our city entirely. The journal circle at the cafe will create even more possibilities for connection. And who knows what other ripples might be forming even now, invisible to us but no less real. The afternoon light shifts around him as he continues writing, people passing by engaged in their own stories, their own journeys. Michael observes it all with quiet appreciation, finding meaning in these ordinary moments. Eventually, he closes me gently, returning me to his bag as he rises to continue his walk. The city has a different quality in these afternoon hours, a steady rhythm somewhere between the hurried energy of morning and the more relaxed pace of evening. As the day begins its gradual transition toward dusk, Michael makes his way home, carrying me securely through streets that have become increasingly familiar during our recent adventures. When he reaches his apartment, he enters quietly, moving through the rooms with the comfort of returning to a space that truly feels like home. He prepares a simple dinner, occasionally touching the outline of my shape in his bag, a gesture that has become almost unconscious over time. After eating, he settles into his favorite chair, removing me once more to record final thoughts about this day of reflection and connection. I keep thinking about Robert, he writes, his familiar handwriting flowing across my pages, about how he'll leave the blue journal somewhere in another city tomorrow, continuing its journey beyond our immediate community. I wonder who will find it there, what thoughts they'll add, where they might choose to leave it next. There's something beautiful about releasing something into the world without knowing its full journey, trusting that it will find its way to the right people at the right moments. He continues writing, until fatigue begins to soften the edges of his thoughts, his pen moving more slowly across the page. The journal circle begins next week. He writes as his entry draws to a close. A new chapter in this unexpected story of connection. I'm curious to see what thoughts people will share, what community might emerge from these shared notebooks. How remarkable that all of this began because I left my journal behind in a moment of distraction. With gentle movements, he closes me and rises to prepare for sleep. He places me on the bedside table where I have rested so many nights before. The lamp casts a warm glow across my worn cover as he settles into bed. "Good night," he murmurs softly, perhaps to me or perhaps simply to the day that is ending. His breathing gradually slows and deepens as sleep embraces him. I remain on the bedside table, keeper of his thoughts and now of a story about connection, about the gentle ways we touch each other's lives, sometimes through objects that pass from hand to hand. The night deepens around us, peaceful and still. Tomorrow will bring new experiences, new reflections to record, new moments to remember. But tonight I rest. A simple journal that briefly became something more, a point of connection in a world where strangers seldom truly meet. The room grows quiet save for the gentle rhythm of Michael's breathing, and I remain, patient and present, ready to receive whatever thoughts tomorrow may bring. Days pass in their gentle rhythm, each one recorded in my pages as Michael continues our shared journey. The journal circle at the cafe begins, creating new connections among regular customers who add their thoughts to themed notebooks displayed on a small bookshelf near the window. Michael participates actively, contributing entries and occasionally striking up conversations with others doing the same. Margaret watches with quiet satisfaction as her idea flourishes, creating exactly the kind of community she had hoped for. Weeks unfold in their unhurried way, the story continuing to evolve in unexpected directions. Occasionally, news of the Blue Journal reaches them, a postcard from someone who found it in the city where Robert had taken it. A message left with the cafe staff from a traveler passing through who recognized the cafe's name from the journal's pages. Each update is celebrated, each new connection appreciated for the reminder that invisible threads continue to form between strangers who may never actually meet. One ordinary morning, Michael arrives at the cafe to discover an envelope with his name on it propped against the journal shelf. Inside is a letter from Robert, the gentleman from the botanical gardens, along with a photograph of the Blue Journal being held by a smiling young woman. The journal continues its journey, Robert writes. After leaving it at a bookshop in my city, it was found by this literature student who contacted me through the cafe information. She tells me she plans to take it with her during her semester abroad, allowing it to collect thoughts from another country entirely. Michael shares this update with Margaret, both of them delighted by this continuation of the journey they helped begin. They add a pin to the world map that now hangs beside the journal shelf, marking this new location in the Blue Journal's travels. Other customers gather around, curious about the story, some of them inspired to contribute to the cafe's journal circle after hearing about this traveling notebook. Days become weeks, weeks become months, and still the story continues, recorded faithfully in my pages as Michael reflects on connection and community. on the unexpected ways meaning emerges from ordinary moments. The journal circle at the cafe flourishes, becoming a beloved feature that distinguishes this particular establishment from countless others throughout the city. Occasionally, news of the Blue Journal reaches them from increasingly distant locations, each update celebrated as confirmation that the ripples continue to spread in ways they could never have predicted. Through it all, I remain the keeper of these reflections, these observations, these moments of meaning discovered in the fabric of everyday life. Each night, I rest on the bedside table beside Michael as he sleeps, and each morning, I receive his thoughts as a new day begins. This is the rhythm we have established, the partnership we have formed, one recording, one preserving, both participating in a story about connection in a world where such bonds are increasingly precious. And so we continue, a journal and its keeper, observers and participants in this gentle unfolding of connection and community. The story has no true ending, only a continuous evolution as new pages are filled, new thoughts recorded, new meanings discovered. Each day brings its own gentle revelations. Each page turns to welcome new reflections. And I remain patient and present, ready to receive whatever thoughts tomorrow may bring. From my place on the bedside table, I watch as another day ends, as Michael drifts into peaceful sleep. The room grows quiet except for the gentle rhythm of his breathing. Outside, the city continues its nighttime hum, countless stories unfolding in countless rooms. And I rest, a simple journal that briefly became something more, a catalyst for unexpected connections, a keeper of memories that might otherwise fade, a silent witness to the beautiful complexity of human experience. The night deepens around us, peaceful and still. Tomorrow will bring new experiences, new reflections to record, new moments to remember. But tonight, I rest, knowing that in some small but meaningful way, I have helped create bridges between strangers who might otherwise have remained forever unknown to one another. The quiet deepens, the world slows, and sleep embraces all within its gentle reach. And I remain patient and present, ready to receive whatever thoughts tomorrow may bring. Sleep now, and dream of journals floating through the air like autumn leaves. Dream of words that connect strangers across time and space. Dream of unexpected journeys that begin with moments of forgetfulness and continue with intention and purpose. Dream of the countless ways we touch each other's lives, often without ever knowing. Sleep now and rest in the knowledge that we are all connected by invisible threads, all part of a story far larger than any single page could hold. Sleep now and drift into the peaceful silence where dreams and memories intertwine. Sleep now, sleep now, sleep.